Hello and welcome back to the RedMars Podcast. I'm your host, Astro Jake, and today, before we even jump into it, I just want to say Happy Friday. And for those that are into the gaming PC world in light of the past two podcasts that I've put out on space computers, not quite gaming, but just wanted to say, did anyone manage to get a 5090 or any of the 50 series GPUs that NVIDIA released? It was absolutely hectic trying to get one of those. I ended up in probably seven different lines on Best Buy trying to get in for a 5090. The 5090 didn't work, so then I tried getting one of the 5080s. That didn't work. Then they released another, they were doing like a rolling release, and tried again for a 5090. I tried on Newegg. No luck, but I did manage to get a pre-built that got my hands on a 5080. There's no pre-builts that were in the budget I was looking to spend for a 5090, so the 5080 will have to do for now. Wasn't too bad, got a good deal on it, and I'm just gonna more or less upgrade that when I get it. So it only came with about 32 gigs of RAM, and since I'm upgrading from an old system that had 64, I need at least 64 gigs of RAM in there, otherwise I kind of feel bad for getting rid of the old one. Unfortunately, my old one uses DDR4 RAM, and the new motherboard does not support DDR4, so I am using DDR5. And just a bit on the processor, I ended up going with an AMD rather than Intel for no good reason, just because. It was the deal that was there at the time. So I ended up with a Ryzen, was the 9800X3D, which is apparently a good one for games, so who knows, maybe I will reactivate my Twitch and start playing some games in the future, which might be fun. Usually play first-person shooter-style games, things like Fortnite, Call of Duty, stuff like that. Loved Splinter Cell back in the day, many of those types of games. Also a big fan of simulation games, so that's like Flight Simulator or Gran Turismo. I have Gran Turismo on my PS5 with the PSVR 2. A blast, absolutely a good time. And so we'll see what we get into. I'll keep you guys updated as I get this computer. I'm not supposed to get it for another week or so, but then I do plan on getting some VR for it, and that way I can play some of the racing games. I do have a whole yoke and rudder pedal setup and joystick setup as well for Flight Simulator, so maybe I'll start putting out some of that content. Who knows? But anyways, back into today's episode. This is going to be a fun episode, and in light of getting past that polar vortex and all the cold weather and cloudy skies, now we are full of sunny skies down here in Florida, and happy to be back in the mid-80s. Sorry for all of you folks that are not surrounded by sunshine and palm trees, but we got it down here in Florida, and it's looking good, and inspired me for this episode today. And what are we talking about? Well, we are going to talk about the super exciting and fascinating futuristic methods of space travel, solar sails. Yes, how sun can allow us to travel deep into the solar system and beyond. So imagine harnessing the power of light and using it to travel across the cosmos, potentially reaching distant galaxies. Think of the Vikings and how they harnessed the power of wind and made their ways across our oceans. Well, we're doing that in the solar system and beyond. So it sounds like science fiction, but it's actually a solid science. And today we're going to break it down and learn how solar sails work, the physics behind what solar pressure is, and the materials used to construct these sails, past and current missions, and what future holds for interstellar sailing. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, so before we get into solar sails themselves, let's talk a bit about the force that makes them possible. Solar radiation pressure. Unlike traditional propulsion systems that rely on chemical or even electric thrusters, solar sails use light itself as a means of propulsion. So, here's the physics behind it. Light. Though it has no mass, it does carry momentum. When photons from the sun or any star strike a surface, they impart a tiny amount of momentum to it. This is known as radiation pressure. In the vacuum of space, this small but consistent and constant force can be harnessed to accelerate spacecraft over long distances, allowing for efficient, propellant-free travel. Absolutely. So, think of it as like a sailboat, as I mentioned, the Vikings. Yes, here on Earth they use wind to move, but instead of wind, a solar sail captures this solar radiation pressure from the sunlight and uses it to push it forward. So the force is minuscule compared to, say, rocket thrust, or even that of a electric propulsion system, but over time, with constant exposure, it can reach very high velocities, potentially even a significant fraction of the speed of light. But how do we actually build a spacecraft that can ride on light? Well, a solar sail needs to be extremely lightweight and highly reflective. To maximize photon pressure efficiency, the most commonly used material for solar sails is mylar, or kapton, coated with a reflective metallic layer like aluminum. Some key properties of solar materials include the following. Ultra thin, typically only a few microns thick, thinner than that of a human hair. Highly reflective, to maximize photon momentum transfer. And then we have lightweight, but we can't forget it has to be strong. So this needs to be able to unfold in space without tearing. This brings us back to that cool foldable technologies or skill sets, I guess you could say, of like origami and whatnot, that they find neat and sophisticated ways of folding materials so that they can take up minimal space but unfold to a maximum size. Those are the types of things that they do for things like solar sails when you need to take up as little space as possible when being launched into space, but then you want it to grow into this massive solar sail to really maximize on the amount of solar pressure or solar radiation pressure to drive your spacecraft through the solar system. So yeah, a typical solar sail consists of 4 triangular segments forming a large square or rectangle attached to a central spacecraft. The sails are deployed using booms, usually made of lightweight carbon fiber, to stretch them out. Again, very similar to that of a pirate ship or a typical sailing boat of today. So, how do solar sails maneuver in space? So, if you got a sail, you can kind of think again, here on Earth using the wind. A very similar concept, but how do we do it in space? So let's talk about that in a real-world application. And there have been a few successful solar sail missions to date. IKAROS in 2010. This was the first successful interplanetary solar sail mission launched by JAXA, that's Japan's space agency, and it demonstrated controlled solar sailing between Earth and Venus. Then that brings us to 2019. LightSail 2. Launched by the Planetary Society, LightSail 2 provided that a small spacecraft could successfully maneuver using solar pressure alone. So, upcoming NASA solar sail missions, NASA is currently developing a new concept for solar sails, including a potential mission to explore asteroids or distant planetary systems. So all these kind of build up from one another, and they learn from each other's failures and wins that allow us to keep expanding and growing this technology. I definitely think in the future there's going to be a combination of propulsion methods that allow us to do these deep space, long duration missions at a low fuel cost. And you could think of it as a lifesaver if you ever are, wandering the cosmos and you find yourself at a space fuel and no gas station close by. Well, hey, solar sail could get you back home. Obviously science fiction for now, but not forever. So, what does the future of interstellar solar sailing look like? Well, one of the most ambitious projects in space exploration today is the Breakthrough Starshot, which aims to send tiny, ultra-lightweight probes to Alpha Centauri. That is our closest star system, using laser-driven solar sails. So the idea is to use power Earth-based lasers to propel tiny spacecraft to speeds up to 20% the speed of light. And if successful, this could open the door to interstellar exploration within human lifetimes. That's super fascinating. So I don't think in my lifetime, but fingers crossed, that would be awesome. But realistically speaking, our children, grandchildren, and so on, as these technologies progress, could see it that they would be able to go to another star system where they leave Earth and get to the star system with just a single generation. So not you have to have multiple generations on a spacecraft, and I think there's movies about that too. I forget which one it was, but it ended up with a spacecraft full of teenagers, and well, you can imagine how that went. So anyways, that is super fascinating to think that we could use this technology to go from points A to B between from our solar system to a neighboring star system, and be able to do that within a single lifetime. So born here, you get up, get on a spacecraft, you're like, hey, I'm from Earth. And then you fly across to Alpha Centauri, get there and be like, by the way, I traveled from Earth to this star system. What do you think of that? And that'd be super cool. So, yes. Anyways, let's continue on here. So what are some of the challenges and limitations then that maybe would hold us back from that? Well, solar sails are promising. They do come with challenges, of course. So one of the first ones, as you may have assumed, is the low acceleration. It takes a long time to really throw those little particles at a solar cell, regardless of the size, to really get it up to speed. So unlike rockets, these long periods of buildup definitely hold us back from getting anywhere quick. Now, with time you get up to speed and then you'll get there quicker, but it's kind of like that tortoise and the hare kind of thing, where you start slow, but at the end you're moving much faster. Tortoise doesn't actually do that, but you get what I'm trying to say. Anyways, deployment difficulties. All right, so large ultra-thin sails must unfold perfectly in space, which is a very delicate process. Absolutely. And if you're trying to do that here on Earth to test, you got to be very careful at the environment that you test these contraptions with, trying to unfold such a large and delicate sail, as we're operating in 1G, that is 1 times the gravitational constant of Earth. And in space, you don't have that. So it's a lot, I guess, more, I won't say a lot, it's more forgiving when it comes to pressures on these structures. But on Earth, when you deploy them, you need a lot of kind of like dollies and that to hold this up as you stretch it out to make sure that your system's going to work. If you don't do that, you risk different beams and that breaking, or you could even cause a tear in your sail, which you definitely don't want to do. All right, next thing is limited maneuverability. We did mention that there was that LightSail 2 in 2019 that demonstrated that it could maneuver using a solar sail. However, you are limited. It's not like you're going to be going and doing a U-turn in space on a very tight radius. Steering a solar sail is complex and requires precise control. That's why it takes lots of practice to drive a sailboat. Now imagine trying to do that in space using something like solar radiation or solar pressure. It's going to be a very difficult and precise method to do so, and so that's results in a very limited maneuverability of the spacecraft. So that's one of the downfalls as well. And then we have the dependence on sunlight. Well, yes, you're not going to ride your solar sail towards the sun. You're going to take it away. Think of it as all forces blasting out in all directions from the sun, and you're grabbing onto one of those rays and away you go. So make sure you're pointing the right way. Maneuverability is not that great, and the farther away you get, well, it's less effective. So laser propulsion is kind of the solution to that, where you would have to point that laser at the solar sail, but then don't forget you're in a line of sight kind of propulsion, and then you're going to have all these lasers shooting off the Earth. Now, you don't have to have it constantly on. You can pulsate it as well, which is a possible solution, or you just different durations at a time as needed to continuously propel that spacecraft. But yeah, good comments or good things to note when looking at solar sails. And if you're trying to design one, definitely something you want to think about. So some final thoughts then on solar sails. So solar sails represent one of the most exciting and viable ways to explore the cosmos beyond our solar system into maybe Alpha Centauri. So they require no fuel, and they have a continuous source of energy as long as you are in sunlight or have that laser beam pointed at you. And they've already been tested successfully. So with projects like Breakthrough Starshot on the horizon, solar sails might one day help humanity reach other star systems. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. A very quick, dirty brief on solar sails and whatnot, but I appreciate everybody for tuning in on this Friday, and hopefully it gives you something to listen to on your ride home today. This is going to be one I release right away. Just wanted to get one out here on Friday, had some time, and thought it would be a good topic to talk about, seeing as we got all this sunshine. So as always, definitely stay tuned. We'll have more topics as we progress through, working through the different technologies that get us through space. So until next time, everybody, remember, stay curious, keep looking up, and take care, everyone. Enjoy your weekend, and hopefully for those that are looking to get one of those new NVIDIA chipsets or the GPUs there, definitely keep trying, refresh those browsers, and maybe something will come available. Or you can do what I did. Go find yourself a pre-built system and then take what you want, sell the rest, or just upgrade as you please. You know, not everybody probably really needs all the processing power you're going to get from one of these bad boys. So that is why I settled on the 5080 to start, and as I need it and as they become more available, we will go with a 5090, or maybe there'll be a 5080 Super at that time. Who knows? But as that time approaches, I will let you know. For now, we'll just stick with what we got. So I'll stop rambling. Appreciate everybody. Take care. Have a great weekend. And until next time.